What's up, fight fans? Thank you as always for passing by the channel. The green chair is back, which means one thing and one thing only. I am back home in London, only for a few days, but nonetheless, I'm excited to be back home in London. All right, let's talk David Price for a few minutes. I'm going to rant about David Price here. So apologies if you are a David Price fan, which I'm kind of as well, but I think it's time that someone speaks out about this bullshit that is going on. All right, so look, I thought personally that David Price should have retired after the Alexander Povetkin loss. I thought it was a perfect way to go out. David Price at the time was fighting a guy that I think most people would have considered a top 5, legit top 5 heavyweight in the world. There was no shame in that loss. It was on pay-per-view. It was in front of something like, what, 70, 80,000 people in the undercard of AJ versus Parker. Perfect way, I think, to call it quits. A decent career, I think. But at the end of the day, David Price has taken a bit too much punishment for me personally. He didn't do that, and then again, he fought on pay-per-view on the undercard of AJ versus Povetkin against Sergey Kuzmin at Wembley. I was there for that fight. I commentated on that fight, and I have to admit, after round 2, I think David Price looked awful. I have to admit it, guys. I think he looked awful. I think his punch output went down massively. He wasn't moving his head. He was sitting on the ropes. The foot movement was just non-existent. And I think he got bailed out because of the injury, right? Everyone seemed to forget how bad that performance was because of the injury. I think, was it a right or left bicep tear? But that almost was a saving grace for him. But I was there and the performance was bad. And I remember thinking, he's far too big, far too slow. He should call it quits. There's nothing left. And there's no shame in that. It's been a long career. If you had the fact that he had a long amateur career plus the professional career, he's had a couple of really bad defeats. There's no shame in saying, you know what? There's nothing left. But now there are rumors that David Price will fight on the undercard of Derek Chisora versus Dillian Whyte on the 22nd of December. And I'm just not happy with it. I'm just not happy with it at all. There are 3 names that keep popping up. The names are Tom Little, which is very random for me. Sergey Kuzmin again, and Carlos Takam. It's more likely to be Sergey Kuzmin because of the way that fight ended. It makes sense to do that fight again. Carlos Takam, we know him, obviously he's been here twice against Derek Chisora and Anthony Joshua, losing both times. But I think that's just a step too far for David Price. And Tom Little, I just don't see how that makes any sense whatsoever. Look, here's the thing for me with David Price. If he wants to continue boxing, by all means do you. Who are we to say someone should retire? As much as I don't want to see him fight again just for his own safety, look, I understand how boxers don't retire until it's too late sometimes. And he looks like he's going to kind of fall down that line, which isn't good. But why the fuck are we having to pay to watch him? This would be, if he's on this card, this would be his 3rd pay-per-view appearance in a row. Again, Joshua Parker undercard, Povetkin Joshua undercard, and now Chisora Whyte undercard. Why is David Price on pay-per-view? I feel like Matchroom must have some analytical evidence that suggests that when David Price fights, pay-per-view numbers go up. When David Price fights, ticket sales go up. Because there must be a reason this guy is on 3 pay-per-views in a row. 3 big events in a row. How does he deserve this? Like, seriously, answer on the postcard. How does he deserve this? If he wants to continue fighting, I think it should be small hall shows, behind the scenes, less pressure, and almost climb your way back up. Why is he getting pay-per-view slots time and time again? And not just pay-per-view slots, but massive pay-per-view slots as well. Again, Joshua Parker was 80,000 people in the Principality Stadium. Joshua Povetkin, I was there for that fight, 80,000 people at Wembley. And Dillian Whyte versus Chisora 2 will be a sellout of the O2 Arena. It's just, for me, it's not fair. Look, pay-per-view should be, I think, for elite fighters or fighters coming up. And unfortunately for David Price, he doesn't fall into those brackets anymore. And even in his heyday with Frank Maloney, I never ever thought of him as an elite fighter. And he's far from that now. I think there should be serious consideration for David Price and his team just to call it quits. I really do, before something stupid happens. And for a number of reasons, not just because I don't think he's got it anymore, but he has world championship aspirations. He's mentioned this before. So he thinks he can get to the world elite level again. He's never been there and he won't get there. And I don't mean to be disrespectful when I say that, but the top 10 heavyweights right now are really, really good. We, and I mean me included, need to stop saying things like he has a puncher's chance. That shouldn't be enough to fight at the world level anymore. And not only that, but because he wants to be at world level, he's having to fight opponents that get him there, right? I mean, Sergey Kuzmin was unbeaten, hence why he fought Kuzmin. Carlos Takam is around the top 20, hence why he wants to fight Carlos Takam. He's fighting guys that I think are way above his level. And I mean that. I think Kuzmin would have probably gone on to stop him, and I think Carlos Takam will. Tom Little, okay, fair enough, and that's probably a more favourable matchup, but what does that do for your career? I just don't want to see him fight again for his own safety. Fingers crossed, if he does fight again, this is his last fight, because, look, boxing ain't a joke, people. Boxing ain't a joke. There was a fighter, I think I read about 3 weeks ago, that got knocked out and died. Knocked out and died. So Eddie Hearn needs to look at what he's doing. It's not just David Price. Eddie Hearn's the one that's given him these opportunities to fight on pay-per-view. And I think Eddie Hearn should take some sort of responsibility for it. But look, there's my rant. It's over. If David Price is going to fight again, cool. Who are we to stop him? But it shouldn't be at our expense. He shouldn't be fighting on pay-per-view. What do you guys think? Let me know. Peace.